Rescuers in Peru face dangerous conditions looking for landslide survivors.
One is knocked unconscious by falling debris. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Ricky Mathay.
And I am Nina Richie Alagao Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Philippine and Chinese diplomats review bilateral relations amidst latest sea disputes. United States donates 10 million pesos for fisher folk in Oriental Mindoro. As threat from China looms, Taiwan launches military exercises. Prince William makes surprise visit to Poland. And U.S. lawmakers grill TikTok chief over security issues. Senior Chinese and Filipino diplomats met to review the relations between the two countries and other issues alarming Beijing. The agenda included the Philippines' decision to allow the presence of American troops in the northern region, which is near the Taiwan Strait, and the continued territorial dispute in the West Philippine Sea. The meeting was led by Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong and Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Teresa Lazaro. In the 23rd China-Philippines Foreign Ministry consultation, an official knowledgeable of the closed-door meeting said the Chinese delegation rejected the presence of U.S. military in the country. Sun and Lazaro will resume their meeting tomorrow, Saturday, March 25, for the 5th bilateral consultation meeting on the South China Sea. In her opening statement, Lazaro emphasized the importance of the meeting.
This year's iteration is a particularly important one, as both sides endeavor to implement the agreements reached between President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and President Xi Jinping during the state visit of President Marcos to the People's Republic of China. We may recall that during the state visit, both leaders agreed to strengthen diplomatic channels and existing dialogue mechanisms, especially in terms of maritime issues.
Meanwhile, Sun cited the need to follow up the earlier agreement between Chinese President Xi Jinping and President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. when the latter held a state visit to China last January.
China stands ready to work with the Philippines under the guidance of the important consensus between the two presidents and to deepen our communication and cooperation on maritime areas to deliver more benefits to our two peoples, to advance the development of our bilateral relations and to uphold a stability of the region.
The Philippines has maintained that diplomatic solutions and peaceful dialogue is the key to resolve the maritime dispute in the West Philippine Sea. Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Teresa Lazaro stresses this point as she heads the Philippine delegation in the 7th Bilateral Consultation Mechanism, or BCM. Lazaro says the Philippines and China are in agreement that maritime issues do not comprise the totality of bilateral relations between the two countries. However, maritime issues continue to remain a serious concern to the Filipino people. She adds the government wants the issue to be discussed in a frank manner as the two countries look for a mutually acceptable approach to address the problem in the disputed territories. The BCM was created during the time of President Rodrigo Duterte in 2017 to discuss the issue of the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea between the two parties.
The government is studying the emergency procurement of remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs. This to contain the oil leakage and prevent further environmental damage by the sunken MT Princess Empress. Nick Pelaez has the details.
The Interagency Task Force on Oil Spill in Oriental Mindoro is finalizing its recommendation for the emergency procurement of remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, to prevent more damage from the oil leak brought by the sunken MT Princess Empress.
We will have to look at the process if it is possible to legally procure on an emergency basis for this case.
Justice Secretary Crispin Remulla admits that the issue is sensitive, just like what happened in the government's procurement of COVID-19 vaccines. But he says there is an immediate need to act as the oil from the sunken tanker may continue to spread. The initial cost to buy an ROV is 120 million pesos.
The services are being procured by a specialist group in the Philippines. Yun lang, may offer sila, but hesitant kasi, maraming hesitation. Ang sabi ko lang, we can always get the reimbursement from the people who should be paying for it because this is a necessary thing that will not last forever. Either we do it now or we don't never do it.
Reports received by the task force say there are 23 holes in the tanker, but authorities have no idea on the rate of spillage or how fast the oil is leaking out. The Department of Justice has coordinated with the Office of Civil Defense for a possible deployment of divers from the Armed Forces of the Philippines to dive to the tanker's location.
We want divers to come down to be able to calculate the rate of spillage to the ocean to know how much oil is pouring out of the tanker. And we asked the OCD to mobilize some of the divers from the armed forces.
Remulla adds a consultant will teach them how to calculate the rate of oil leakage from the tanker, which is important for the government's response on the situation.
Our consultant suggested a way to be able to calculate that because he's a diving instructor and he's a naval man who knows the ins and outs of the sea disasters. Tinuturuan niya sila kung paano ikalkula yung rate of ascent. So pwede natin ikalkula kung ilan pa naiiwan at kung meron pa talaga naiiwan. Yan ang critical part dito.
Nick Pelaez, for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United States will give 10 million pesos in assistance to support the oil spill management and environmental assessment program in Oriental Mindoro. Based on the report of the U.S. Embassy in Manila, the finding will be used for the training of fisherfolk who lost their livelihood due to the fishing ban. They will be trained as citizen scientists who will conduct a coastal habitat assessment in the provinces with the assistance of the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. Moreover, USAID Philippines has also distributed the first tranche of personal protective equipment, or PPE, hygiene kits, and spill cleaning supplies in the province. Last week, a team of experts from the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration arrived in the municipality of Pola to share their expertise in the oil spill cleanup.
Social media enthusiasts and the public are awaiting the formal launch of the Presidential Help Desk. The new office under the supervision of the Office of the President will address medical and financial problems of those in need. Paulo Ramos has the story.
The Marcos administration will intensify efforts to provide financial and medical assistance to the public. People interviewed by Net25 say they are waiting for the formal launching of the project. They include Belen Asuncion and her friend Teresita Remias. As senior citizens, they make a living selling snacks. Both ask the president to include them in the financial assistance to alleviate their poverty.
Nananawagan po ako sa inyo na sana naman po matulungan kami sa pang-araw-araw namin buhay. Doon po sa madagdagan yung puhunan ko. Kasi gusto ko magtinda ng ulam. Wala po akong puhunan. Marami naman nag-o-offer, kaya lang 5-6 yung mga nagpapautang. Mahirap po yun. Mahirap magkaroon ng ganun na obligasyon. Kaya sana naman po matulungan nyo po kami.
Gusto ko po sana magkaroon pa ng magandang puhunan. Diba, mabigyan tayo sa kayo sa yung mga senior dapat tulungan lagi sa financial. Sa mga pambili ng gamot.
Vegetable vendor James Bongadon also hopes that the Presidential Help Desk could help him.
Pangulo, kung mayroon kang ibibigay sa amin ng mga vendors, mas mabuti naman kung mayroon. Nagpakaawa na kami sa iyo dahil bago lang kami nakatikim ng magandang buhay. Mas mabuti naman nga ang paninda ngayon kami ng mga negosyante, mas mabuti naman nga binababaan na ulit, may awa ka naman sa amin. Thank you.
The Presidential Help Desk will be supervised by the Presidential Action Center or PACE. Under Executive Order Number 20, signed by Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, the Presidential Help Desk will serve as an additional arm to the medical assistance and various projects launched by the administration to qualified beneficiaries. The source of funding for the project will come from the Office of the President. In the first 6 months of the Marcos administration, the Office of the President, through the Presidential Complaint Center, have received 52,728 action documents from the public. 20% of complaints have involved medical and financial assistance to buy medicine and pay hospital bills, among others. Paulo Ramos for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Meanwhile, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is in search of a new chief for the Sugar Regulatory Administration, or SRA, following the resignation of David John Thaddeus Alba. Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin says Alba relayed his decision to leave the agency last Wednesday, March 22. The irrevocable resignation of Alba cited his serious health condition. Alba's resignation will be effective on April 15, while the president looks for a replacement. Meanwhile, Malacanang has announced the appointment of officials to various positions in government. The appointees include those for the Department of Agrarian Reform, Department of Agriculture, Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Human Settlement and Urban Development, Department of Labor and Employment, National Security Council, Department of National Defense, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Transportation, and the Department of Interior and Local Government.
Committee hearings at the House of Representatives will continue while Congress has a break in session from March 23 all the way to May 7 of this year. The members approved the resolution filed by House Majority Leader Manix Delipe to hasten the proceedings in approval of pending legislation. House Speaker Martin Romualdez also approved the decision of the members. The Speaker earlier reported that the chamber had passed on third and final readings 23 out of the 31 priority legislation of the Marcos administration. The approved bills were transmitted to the Senate for deliberation. Romualdez says that the lower chamber's swift approval of the priority bills is proof of the lawmakers' commitment to help achieve the 8-point socio-economic agenda of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we authorize all committees to conduct meetings and/or public hearings if deemed necessary during the House recess from March 23 to May 7, 2023.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
The PNP Criminal Investigation and Detection Group, or CIDG, raided the property of former Negros Oriental Governor Pride Henry Teves, the brother of Congressman Arnolfo Teves. Operatives have confiscated high-caliber firearms, ammunition, and millions of cash. Celine Dorado has the story.
Weeks after police authorities raided the properties of embattled Negros Oriental Congressman Arnolfo Teves, operatives of the PNP Criminal Investigation Group, or CIDG, have also raided the property of his brother, former Negros Oriental Governor Pride Henry Teves. The police officers served a search warrant issued by the court to HDJ Agriventure compound in the town of Santa Catalina, owned by Pride Teves. Authorities recovered high-caliber firearms, ammunitions, and millions of cash. They also arrested some individuals inside the compound.
Meron na po tayong mga tao na under custody ngayon at sila po ay ipepresent po natin sa sasagawa po ng inquest proceeding dahil I understand may mga na-recover po sa kanila ng mga baril. At ito namang mga baril po na ito ay isasubmit po natin sa Firearms and Explosive Office para i-check din po sa records po ng PNP kung ito nga po bang mga naarestong tao ay meron po silang hawak na license to possess and own firearms at itong mga baril na nakumpiska ay nakarehistro sa ating database.
Authorities raided the property following reports received from some informants. The search warrant was addressed to Pride Teves and other directors of his corporation.
Wala pa po tayong impormasyon kung ito po bang ay related po sa Digamo case, but based on the information provided to us ay may isa nga po tayong informant at isang witness na nagsasabi at nagbigay nga po ng impormasyon na meron nga pong mga itinatago na mga matataas na kalibre ng baril dito nga po sa nasabing compound.
Meanwhile, the PNP say it is ready to investigate other killing incidents linking the Teves siblings based on the exposed of Pamplona Mayor Janice Degamo, wife of Slate Governor Roel Degamo. This is apart from the 3 killing cases in 2019 that the CIDG filed against Congressman Teves.
At marami po tayong nare-receive na information at kung sakasakali po na may mga pulis na po na involved dyan ay umaapila rin po tayo sa ating mga kababayan na meron pong mga information regarding dito sa mga sinasabi pong mga pagpatay at kasama na rin po dyan doon sa mga impormasyon na binibigay nga po ng ni Mayor Janice Degamo po ay we will appreciate it po at makakaasa po kayo na lahat po itong kaso na ito ay iimbestigahan po ng Philippine National Police.
The PNP also respects the decision of Mayor Degamo seeking for a Senate investigation in relation to the series of killings that happened in their province. Police authorities say the Senate probe will help authorities gather more evidence that could help in the investigation. Celine Dorado for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, rescuers in Peru face danger conditions looking for landslide survivors. North Korea reveals a radioactive tsunami weapon. And Prince William makes a surprise visit to troops in Poland. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break.
Medyo mas pinaka-brutal sa mga hazing cases po namin dahil may intent po na itago.
Dito sa hazing, wala namang magsasabing intensyon patayin Kung hindi, talaga sumobra yung kabubugbog, namatay.
Bakit pa kababa ng conviction rate? Ang nag-recruit ba kasama sa pwedeng makasuhan? Mag-reality check tayo.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's stand together. Sa Net 25. Why did I fall for something that's not real? There's too much for me to heal. We were going on spiral. When I asked you to
Hi mga ka-sound trip, this is Gabriel Umali and abangan nyo ako sa Letters and Music this coming Saturday, 1 p.m. only on Net 25.
This portion is brought to you by
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Rescue crews in Peru face dangerous conditions as they search for survivors of landslides. Heavy rain has triggered several mudslides that have buried houses. More than 50 people have died. The footage you see here illustrates the dangerous conditions in which rescuers are trying to work. Now watch this as a police rescuer scales the bank of the Rimac River in northern Lima. As he makes his way up, he is hit by a refrigerator when part of a house collapses. Firefighters manage to pull him to safety. You can see how the flooding has damaged buildings along the riverbank. Forecasters figure it will be next month before the rain lets up.
Cyclone Freddy has pummeled several East African countries. It also has left a humanitarian crisis in its wake. Dr. Matshidiso Rebecca Moeti of the World Health Organization says the healthcare system is in shambles.
More than 300 health facilities, including university hospital centers, have been destroyed or flooded in Madagascar, Malawi, and Mozambique, leaving communities without adequate access to health services. The extensive damage, flooding, and torrential rains have affected more than 1.4 million people in the three countries and stretched the capacity of health systems.
Millions of people have been left homeless, and Moeti says the devastation has left people vulnerable to disease.
The cyclone's devastation has raised public health risks, including the increased spread of cholera, and of course, support for trauma and mental health is equally needed.
Moeti adds 12 African countries are experiencing cholera outbreaks.
China has approved its first COVID-19 vaccine based on mRNA technology. An official statement says CSPC Pharmaceutical Group developed the breakthrough vaccine. The vaccine targets the Omicron variant and was tested in China with over 5,500 people. In a study of 4,000 participants from December 10 to January 18, mRNA vaccines showed an efficacy rate of 85.3%. An expert on molecular virology says scientific evidence admits that mRNA vaccines are better than other vaccine types. The World Health Organization asserts mRNA technology is a very solid option for countries that have vulnerable populations.
As the threat from Beijing looms large, Taiwan stages a military exercise. The military holds drills close to Dawan International Airport on the north part of the island. The drills simulate an enemy beach landing. Taiwanese soldiers practice repelling the invading forces. The self-ruled island is fortifying its defense as China ramps up military, economic, and diplomatic pressure. China staged massive military drills around the island last year. Taipei says these are preparations for an invasion.
North Korea has tested an underwater nuclear attack drone able to unleash a radioactive tsunami. This as Pyongyang blames the recent U.S.-South Korean exercises for deteriorating regional security. Prince Limonero tells us more.
North Korean President Kim Jong-un reportedly oversaw cruise missile tests as a warning to the United States and South Korea of an actual nuclear crisis at hand. North Korea revealed a homegrown underwater nuclear attack drone for the first time via state media Friday and reported on cruise missile tests guided by leader Kim Jong-un in recent days, warning the US and South Korea that an actual nuclear crisis is at hand. The Korean Central News Agency, or KZNA, stated that the underwater drone is named Hail and that its mission is to stealthily infiltrate into operational waters and make a super-scale radioactive tsunami through underwater explosion to destroy naval strider groups and major operational ports of the enemy. The missile tests come in the wake of the US and South Korea conducting large-scale military drills, which have been decried by North Korean officials. South Korea implemented sanctions against North Korea in response to the drills, targeting the country's satellite and missile programs. The US and South Korea have also been critical of North Korea's nuclear weapons program, which the US has sought to roll back in exchange for North Korean denuclearization. However, North Korea has thus far refused to give up its nuclear weapons, citing security concerns. The revelation of undersea drone is likely to further increase tensions between North Korea and the US and South Korea, as the potential for a devastating attack with the weapon increases. Prince Limonero for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Pentagon says it carried out airstrikes in Syria overnight. Sources say fire ravaged the facilities used by the groups linked with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, or IRCG. The airstrike was a response to the drone attack that killed an American contractor and injured 5 service personnel in northeast Syria. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says President Joe Biden had signed off on the strike to protect Americans abroad. The IRCG is the ideological arm of the Iranian military. The U.S. labels it as a terrorist group.
Prince William traveled to Poland on an unannounced trip to thank British and Polish troops. Our UK correspondent, Love and Season, tells us more.
Prince William of Wales made a surprise visit to Poland on Wednesday. News sources say his trip was kept secret until he arrived in Rzeszów, a town near the border of Ukraine. Prince William talked to British and Polish troops who are helping Ukraine fight against Russia. Reports say the prince thanked the soldiers for defending their freedom. Prince William also posted about his trip on social media. He also praised a center for Ukrainian refugees that provides food and emotional support to evacuees. He also met with Polish President Andrzej Duda. Sources say the prince's visit was to show Britain's support for Ukraine. The United Kingdom reportedly allotted £2.3 billion in military assistance to Ukraine in 2022. Britain says they are planning to match that funding this year. Other reports say UK aims to train 10,000 Ukrainian troops and pilots in 120 days. This is Love and Season for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
On a bus, children from Russian-held territory returned to Kiev. They are now reunited with their family members. The reunion is organized by Save Ukraine. It is an NGO that fights what it says are illegal deportations of Ukrainian children to Russian-controlled territory. A lawyer for the group says parents had their children taken with promises of a short summer camp in annexed Crimea. He accuses Russia of taking the children through blackmail, manipulation, and intimidation.
Russia has accused the U.S. government of obstructing efforts to investigate a sabotage of the Nord Stream natural gas pipelines. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a congressional hearing that the United States played no role in the attacks on the twin pipelines. Blink also alleged Moscow of outrageous misinformation on the issue. But Kremlin's embassy in Washington argued that statements by U.S. officials are not trustworthy. Moscow also asserted that while Washington has ongoing Nord Stream investigations, it continues to block Russia's own attempts to find answers. Kremlin embassy claimed United States officials lack transparency to determine the circumstances of the Nord Stream attack. It reiterated U.S. President Joe Biden's threat against Russia. The Russian embassy ended its argument by asking whether U.S. officials have something to hide.
Enforcing the International Criminal Court, or ICC, arrest warrant against Russian President Vladimir Putin might violate Hungarian law. This is the statement of Hungarian Prime Minister Gergely Gulyas. Hungary has reportedly no official position on ICC's alleged war crimes against Putin. But Gulyas also said the ICC statute has not been promulgated in Hungary. He qualified ICC's arrest warrant as personal and subjective opinion. Last week, the ICC called for the arrest of Putin and Russian Children's Rights Commissioner Maria Lvova-Belova. Prosecutor Karim Khan said Putin and Belova are indirectly responsible for the forcible transfer of population and other war crimes. But Russia insisted ICC has no authority or legitimacy, as Moscow never ratified the 1998 Rome Statute that established the court.
In New York, anti-Trump protesters deploy a banner that says the former U.S. president lies all the time. The demonstrators put up a sign in front of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office in New York City. As tensions build over a possible indictment, Bragg accuses Trump of creating a false expectation of his imminent arrest. The New York prosecutor is investigating the ex-president over hush money.
Coming up, pension reform protests in France continue for 9th day. TikTok chief faces off with U.S. lawmakers as ban looms. And WHO chief warns of fake news after Musk pandemic treaty tweet. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a few moments. Please don't go away.
And here he is, Boyet De Leon in the flesh. Alam mo kasi bata pa lang ako, Diloko lang.
Bata. Ako naka-shorts na. Bata ka pa na.
Alam mo ba kung paano ko sila inalagaan?
50 years in the industry, right? Paano nangyari yun? 47 ka lang.
Hindi ko nga maintindihan.
Mali ang mathematics, ano? Ipinapanganak ka bang magaling na artista o natuturo yan?
Siguro nasa dugo ko eh.
Saan ka humuhugot?
Meron tayo lahat. Yung toolbox.
Well, I have a makeup kit. Hindi ako makapaniwala, wala siyang tiyan.
Nagkukulay blue na nga ako, sabi ko kanina.
Hindi humihinga. You have a certain way of walking eh. Ano natutunan yun sa kalye? Ayan na siya.
I wanted to buy some of my movies, the bad ones.
The bad ones?
And burn it.
Nagkatuluyan ba kayo ni Vilma?
No.
Ay, hindi. Sinora yun. Wrong number ako.
5-7 years. Lahat. I lost everything.
Umabot ka sa pagsasanda ng bahay?
You know, I just like, help!
Grabe.
Hindi mo maisa sa pelikula yung nangyari sa akin.
Pag together, wala tayo pag together, let's stand together. Sunday 25.
The opposition to French President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform shows no sign of letting up. For a 9th straight day, protesters demonstrated their anger toward the government. The French government estimates more than 1 million people took part in Thursday's demonstrations. More than 119,000 marched in Paris alone. Hundreds of thousands of workers walked off the job. Schools and government offices shut down. Transportation is affected. Half of the country's high-speed train schedules are canceled. Trash continues to pile up on the streets of Paris as garbage collectors remain off the job. Blockades are still up at oil refineries. It prompts the government to warn that the kerosene supply to the capital and its airports is becoming critically low. Many of the demonstrations have turned violent. This despite a call from union leaders to keep the protests peaceful. In Paris, black-clad radical demonstrators broke windows of banks, shops, and fast food outlets. They destroyed street furniture. Several people have been arrested. A public opinion poll shows Macron's approval rating has dropped to just 28%. That's the lowest level since the anti-government Yellow Vest protest movement in 2018 and 2019.
Iranian spokesperson Nasir Kanani urges France to listen to protesters and avoid violence. In his tweet, he uses the quote, "Those who sow the wind reap the storm." This calls the French government to converse with its people to avoid chaos. Recently, Iran faced a month-long protest over the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. Meanwhile, protesters set fire to Bordeaux Town Hall, causing the postponement of King Charles's visit to France. French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin reports 457 people were arrested and 441 injured during the protests.
In Israel, tens of thousands of anti-government protesters rally in Tel Aviv and other cities. They are voicing their opposition to proposed judicial reforms. Demonstrators clash with people and several are arrested. In Tel Aviv, police fire a water cannon at protesters blocking a highway in the city. Protesters also rally in Jerusalem. Several thousand gather outside the residence of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The reforms announced in January give the government more control over the Supreme Court. The changes would allow lawmakers to overturn court decisions by a simple majority. They would also have more say on the appointment of judges. Opponents say the changes threaten democracy.
In Washington, D.C., TikTok CEO Shao Zishu battles for the survival of the hugely popular video-sharing app in the United States. Shao Zishu faces a barrage of accusations from Washington lawmakers, among them the company's alleged ties to China and its danger to teens. He says to address Washington's concerns, clear and transparent rules are needed, those that apply to all tech companies.
Would also like to talk about national security concerns that you have raised, that we take very, very seriously. Let me start by addressing a few misconceptions about ByteDance, of which we are a subsidiary. ByteDance is not owned or controlled by the Chinese government. It's a private company. We believe what's needed are clear, transparent rules that apply broadly to all tech companies. Ownership is not at the core of addressing these concerns.
Chinese spokesperson Mao Ning says China does not ask its companies abroad to hand over data in a way that violates local laws. She emphasizes that Beijing shows the importance to secure data privacy. The diplomat notes that the potential ban that TikTok is facing is xenophobic political persecution imposed by the U.S. Congress.
美国政府迄今没有提供任何证据证明 TikTok 威胁美国国家安全，却一再对有关企业做有罪推定和无理打压。我们也注意到，有美国国会议员表示，寻求禁止 TikTok 是仇外的政治迫害。
Thursday, TikTok CEO Shao Zishu faced non-stop queries over the video-sharing app's alleged ties to China. Chu defends ByteDance's innocence, saying it is a subsidiary. However, U.S. lawmakers made Chu acknowledge the access of China's cybersecurity law to personal American data. In 2017, a law in China went into effect that requires local firms to submit personal data to the state if significant to national security.
South Africa's newly appointed electricity minister visits the Lethabo power station in the Free State near the city of Sasolburg. Gosienso Ramokgopa attempts to find solutions to South Africa's energy crisis. Ramokgopa meets with the station's management and holds a town hall meeting with workers. He says load shedding will be resolved by getting the units back online. Load shedding is a method of reducing demand on the energy generation system by temporarily switching off the distribution of energy to certain areas at specific times.
Service electricity in this country is costing the South African economy 500 billion rands per annum. We also know from Stats SA that the GDP contraction as a result of load shedding is about 2.1 percentage points. We got statistics just the other day that the South African economy is contracted by 1.3% on the back of load shedding.
In other news, a police raid on a slum near Rio de Janeiro in Brazil leaves at least 13 people dead. Local media report one of the dead is a suspected leader of a criminal gang active in the north of Brazil. In addition to the 13 dead, 2 women suffered wounds in the clash. Police say they launched a raid to capture members of the Comando Vermelho gang. It is one of the oldest and largest gangs in Brazil. It focuses heavily on drug trafficking. Authorities say gang members had taken refuge in the district. Military police forces have been deployed to the entrance of the favela.
World Health Organization Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus warns of fake news about the pandemic accord. This after Elon Musk writes on Twitter, countries should not cede authority to WHO. Without naming the South African billionaire directly, the WHO chief says the claim that the accord will cede power to WHO is untrue.
We continue to see misinformation on social media and in mainstream media about the pandemic accord that countries are now negotiating. As I said last week, the claim that the accord will cede power to WHO is quite simply false. It's fake news. Countries will decide what the accord says, and countries alone.
In the U.S., new data reveal that tuberculosis cases increased again in the year 2022. Bernadette Ragini reports.
March 24 is World Tuberculosis or TB Day. Ahead of this, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, releases new data showing that the number of TB disease cases in the country has increased by 5% in 2022. That's an increase of 8,300 cases. The number, however, did not return to pre-pandemic levels. The CDC says public health officials were concerned about delayed or missed diagnosis of TB disease in 2020. This after a substantial 20% decline that year. Today, 2 years later, CDC data signal a rebound in cases. Considerable increases among some groups include children aged 4 and under, people who are incarcerated, people from some racial and ethnic groups. TB is one of the world's leading infectious disease killers. The health agency calls on healthcare providers and communities disproportionately affected by TB to think, test, and treat TB. In Virginia Beach, Virginia, Bernadette Ragini from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In Papua New Guinea, governors hold their inaugural consultative conference in the capital city. One resolution is the transfer administrative and financial authority to the provincial government. Eco Hortaleza Quinola reports.
17 out of 20 governors in Papua New Guinea attended the first ever governors consultative meeting. The event is co-hosted by Port Moresby's Honorable Governor Poes Parkop and Hela Province Governor Philip Undialu. One of the resolutions is the transfer of administrative and financial powers to the provincial government. The provincial leaders also tackle issues about the decentralization of political powers to the provinces. The two-day governors' meet concludes with the presence of Prime Minister Honorable James Marape. He commends all governors for gathering together in a bipartisan approach. He asks help in tailoring a system that is complementary to national government as far as delivering services and ensuring the citizens of Papua New Guinea's welfare.
All leaders on the table is it's a bipartisan approach. The Governors Forum has members in the opposition side as well as the government side. But when it comes to common good for our people, we come together and make resolutions that is befitting of our people. All in leading up to our life as a nation beyond 50 years of independence by this September 16. We hope to have total clarity on what our roles, responsibilities, functions, and functions of provincial government, national government, districts, and agencies. In that clarity, we hope to be expeditious and efficient in the way we do business and service to our people.
Eco Hortaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
With With declining stocks of whitefish, many fishermen in northern England have turned to lobster fishing. To ensure the survival of the lobster stocks, a hatchery in Whitby raises the crustaceans before releasing them into the open sea. In London, United Kingdom, Sara Alcantara reports.
Several fishermen in Whitby in the northeast have switched to lobster fishing as whitefish stocks decline throughout the United Kingdom. A hatchery has been established in Whitby to nurture the crustaceans to a juvenile stage of development before releasing them into the water, boosting the likelihood that more will survive into adulthood and ensuring the longevity of the lobster populations.
Yeah, so here in Whitby, we are the third largest lobster fishery in Europe, and on average we catch around 100,000 lobsters each year. So what we would like to do is to offset that by releasing around about 100,000 juvenile lobsters back into the sea to make sure those wild populations are underpinned and protected for the future.
Some 100,000 lobsters are landed each year, providing jobs for 150 people. Joe Redfern, who runs the Whitby Lobster Hatchery, hopes eventually to release the same number each year from his tanks. In the unforgiving open sea, the survival rate for lobster larvae is just 1 in 20,000 or 0.5%. By allowing them to grow in a protected environment, Redfern hopes to increase that to 20 or 30%.
Yeah, it was really born out of the fishing industry. You know, there's like I say, there's a lot of people now dependent on the lobster industry, and you know, it's really come from the fishing community that they wanted to make sure that that was protected into the future. So the idea was there to try and do what we can to give something back to the oceans to make sure that they're safe and secure, and in doing so protecting the fishing livelihoods into the future as well.
The project raised more than £100,000 or $120,000 to get off the ground from crowdfunding and corporate sponsorship. Individual donors can sponsor a lobster and follow it until it is introduced into the sea. The idea came from the Whitby fishing community, drawing inspiration from a similar project in Cornwall, southwest England. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I am Sara Alcantara for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United Nations warns of an imminent water crisis if overconsumption and overdevelopment continues. Robert Connor, lead author of the UN World Water Development Report, says water shortages pit city dwellers against rural residents.
The farmers and the cities are in competition for limited water supplies. Now, it's not a question of one or the other, because the agricultural areas that surround the cities are needed to feed the cities themselves. So you have to find a balance there.
Connor goes on to say any water crisis will affect people unequally.
No matter where you are, if you are rich enough, you will manage to get water. The price will increase, but it is a central need for your existence. So and the poorer you are, the more vulnerable you will be to these crises.
Connor says unless people start to use water wisely, up to a quarter of the world's population will not have access to a safe water supply.
Coming right up, drug maker Moderna hikes COVID vaccine price to $130 per dose. Japan wins over Team USA in World Baseball Classic final. And guidelines released for Blackpink's Philippine Arena concert. Catch more news when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Moderna President Stefan Bancel plans a hike of COVID vaccine price from below $30 to $130 a dose. This is due to the U.S. government's impending switch to private sources of the vaccine. The hike applies when the government's supply runs out. However, U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders slams the price hike, saying taxpayers invested $12 billion for the vaccine. Sanders adds the vaccine only costs $3 in production. Bancel defends that Moderna will organize a program to ensure the UN insured or uninsured or underinsured will not pay anything. Meanwhile, Pfizer claims to join the hike by adding $20 to its $110 per dose of COVID vaccine.
Montenegro on Friday charged fugitive cryptocurrency entrepreneur Do Kwon with forgery. The South Korean is expected to appear in court for extradition proceedings. He is accused of fraud over his company's dramatic collapse last year. The fall wiped out about $40 billion of investors' money and shook global crypto markets. Kwon's Terra USD was marketed as a stable coin, which is typically pegged to stable assets to prevent drastic fluctuations in prices. But Terra USD was an algorithmic stable coin not backed by assets. Instead, it was pegged only to its floating sister currency Luna. The two currencies went into free fall in May last year.
Japan wins the World Baseball Classic final over Team USA. Shohei Ohtani closed out the win from the mound in the 9th inning. He delivered a 3-2 victory that struck out Angels teammate and U.S. captain Mike Trout. Home runs from Munetaka Murakami and Kazuma Okamoto helped put Japan ahead before the Los Angeles Angels. Ohtani, who was also named tournament MVP, said the win was the highlight of his career. He fired up his teammates with a rousing pre-game speech. He urged them to stop admiring an American lineup regarded as the strongest U.S. baseball team ever assembled. The star-studded U.S. team were left rueing their inability to get on top of Japan's pitchers. Japan's WBC victory was its third, following triumphs in 2006 and 2009.
Tomorrow night will be the most awaited concert of Blackpink at the Philippine Arena. Live Nation Philippines has released guidelines and schedules for ticket holders. Randy Bernardino has the details.
This weekend is the most anticipated concert of Blackpink at the Philippine Arena in Bukawi, Bulacan. Thousands of Blinks are expected to attend the group's two-night concert on March 25 and 26. The concert starts at 7 in the evening. VIP ticket holders can line up at 11 in the morning to get straps and verify their tickets. The lobby will officially open at 3 in the afternoon. For those with floor-standing tickets, queuing will start at 12 noon and the lobby will open at 4 p.m. Gates for the lower box are at drop-off point 1 and drop-off point 2, while upper box ticket holders will enter at the front of the Philippine Arena. Official merchandise of Blackpink's World Tour is also available at the Philippine Sports Stadium, outer and inner plaza, concession area, and second floor main lobby. Blackpink's concert in the country is part of their Born Pink World Tour. Jisoo, Jennie, Rosé, and Lisa released their Born Pink album last year. Filipino Blinks will finally see Blackpink in our area. Randy Bernardino for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has charged Lindsay Lohan, Jake Paul, and 6 other celebrities for touting cryptocurrencies on social media without revealing that they were being paid. Charges are part of the ongoing case involving entrepreneur Justin Sun, who markets and manipulates unregistered crypto assets Tronix and BitTorrent. The SEC or SEC suspects that Sun used his own employees to buy and sell the assets to boost the appearance of trade in the market. He also employed celebrity promoters to campaign his crypto, hiding the fact that they are paid. SEC Chairman Gary Gensler said in a statement that this case demonstrates the high-risk investors face when crypto asset securities are offered and sold without proper disclosure. Lowen and Paul both agreed to pay $40,000 for restitution and nearly $102,000 for fines, along with 4 other celebrities. Meanwhile, the remaining 2 artists did not settle.
And now that it's Friday, or should I say Friday, time to de-stress with a movie. Stephanie Mayo has some suggestions. Let's take a look.
For this weekend, why not catch these critically acclaimed foreign films? Agila, the Singaporean entry to this year's Oscar Awards for Best International Film, this road trip drama centers on a middle-aged Singaporean woman played by Hong Hui-fang who goes on a life-changing solo trip to Korea. Heartwarming and enjoyable, Agila is perfect if you're in the mood for a light but emotionally rewarding experience. Suzume. The critically acclaimed Japanese animated film is the 4th highest grossing film in Japan last year. Suzume is a fantasy adventure that follows a high school girl and a mysterious young man. They embark on a wild adventure to thwart a series of catastrophic disasters. Written and directed by Makoto Shinkai, it's a whimsical, magical experience enhanced by the animation's stunning and painterly visuals. Both movies are currently playing in Philippine theaters. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
And to end this weekday, here's a quote from 18th century Irish novelist Maria Edgeworth. If we take care of the moments, the years will take care of themselves.
That is why I personally believe we should live every moment and see the beauty in little things, and those little moments will sum up to many wonderful years.
I absolutely concur with you, Nina. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. Happy weekend, everyone. I am Ricky Mapay.
And I am Nina Richielago Flores. We're wishing everyone a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. This is Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.